The New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation promotes, preserves, and perpetuates music, culture, and heritage through programs, cultural, educational, and economic activities year-round. Learn more at jazzandheritage.org. This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area. Steppin Out is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
It happens here each week. We step out and enjoy our region's events and rich culture.
We are proud to support WYES.
Roll camera.
I'm Peggy Scott Laborde, and welcome to Steppin Out. We are stepping out with updates from the local restaurant, arts, and entertainment scenes. Joining me, Gwen Thompkins, host and producer of the public radio series Music Inside Out. Welcome back, Miss Gwen.
Thank you so much.
And making his debut tonight, Adam T. Foreman, Senior Manager of Interpretation and Education for the Shadows-on-the-Teche historic home, and that's, of course, in New Iberia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. New Orleans author, also making his debut, Jay Hakes, former director of the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and author of the brand new book, The Presidents and the Planet, Climate Science, and Politics from Eisenhower to Bush, published by LSU Press. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Peg.
Hello, hello. And also former, way back when, UNO professor of political science.
Had some great students there.
Yeah, you certainly did, right? More about that, right? And Alan Smason, of course, editor of the Crescent City Jewish News and theatercriticism.com. And Poppy will be back soon. Gwen, for folks who are in search of some live local music this weekend, some suggestions?
Well, I'm going to suggest a dancing night. And that's it's going to begin on Saturday over at the Spotted Cat. I think you all know the Panorama Jazz Band, which is an absolutely fantastic band. They've had a residency at the Spotted Cat for a long time now, and it's really hard to resist them. They play traditional jazz from New Orleans and brass band music from here, but they also play brass band and jazz from the Balkans and from Latin America, and they also play klezmer. And so on Saturday night, they are going to be over at the Spotted Cat. It's a top-notch band led by Ben Shank, who plays clarinet, and every musician in this band, I think it's a 7-member band, could or has already started their own band. They're that good, you know. And so it'll be Aurora Nealand on alto sax, Charlie Halloran on trombone, Simon Mauschebach on accordion, Mark Rubin on tenor banjo, Matt Perrine on sousaphone, and Doug Harrison on drums. It's just going to be lovely. They'll play from 6 probably until 10, unless they can be convinced to keep on going. And you can also dance at the Spotted Cat, which is really fun on Frenchman Street. Also, if you want to break away from the Spotted Cat early, you know, it's a great disco night as well. So Tipitina's is going to be hosting a group called Gimme Gimme Disco. Gimme Gimme Disco, and they're going to be playing the music that's of ABBA, or music that's been inspired by ABBA. And this is a confederation of DJs, and they travel all over the country, you know, I mean, giving these disco nights, and they play along with the ABBA music. They play Cher, they play the Bee Gees, they play, you know, the great Donna Summer, and you know, for anybody who wants to, you know, to shake out a nice end to the summer, you know what I mean, over a Labor Day weekend, it could be kind of fun to wear your disco shoes and your disco outfits, and you know what I mean, and enjoy yourself, just like the old song says, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think, you know.
For sure.
And so why not dance all night? And that's going to begin. Well, the doors will open at 9 at Tipitina's, and who knows how long it will go. I guess there are always records to play. And then on Tuesday, this is a lovely evening planned over at the Ellis Marcellus Center for Music down in the 9th Ward. This is Detroit Brooks who is just one of my favorite band leaders here in New Orleans. He can call almost any tune. He's rooted in jazz and gospel and R&B. He writes original songs, and he's the co-founder and the chief talent behind the Danny Barker Guitar Festival every year. Yeah, because like Barker, he plays banjo and guitar, and that festival began because he believed that even though New Orleans is known as a brass town and a piano town, people don't really understand it as a guitar town as well. And people have been playing guitar in New Orleans since the 1800s, you know. And so we're talking about Johnny St. Cyr all the way to Earl King, to Leo Nocentelli, to Walter Wolfman Washington, you know. And so Brooks is going to bring with him Donald Ramsey on bass, Herman Lebeau on drums, who's just so great, Alonzo Bowens on sax, and the great Kyle Roussel on piano. That guy is just someone to see. And that's going to be Tuesday at the Ellis Marcellus Center beginning at 6:30. So make sure to call in advance if you want.
Absolutely.
You could get a discount, actually. It's true.
And there are two ways to get tickets, but I think one of the easier ways would be go to ellismarcelluscenter.org, click on tickets. But no, it sounds like just a great thing.
It's going to be
I'm
lovely.
such a fan of Detroit Brooks.
He is just the sweetest
because
man
he
in the
doesn't have to
world.
do the Danny Barker Festival. You know, he's doing that. That's a generosity of spirit.
Yes.
You know, so yeah,
Yes,
it's
he's
very,
got great
very impressive.
energy.
Very great, positive energy. Thank you. And Jay, it's so nice to have you with us. And once again, congratulations on your book. And you, I'm so glad, are back in New Orleans and have been for years, but working on this brand new book. And God bless LSU Press on this as well. But how did it come to be?
Well, climate change has really exploded as an issue now. People are discussing it a lot more. And so there's more books coming out, and I have to ask myself, is there a book that I can do that adds to this discussion? So I thought what was missing was the early history when we first sort of discovered climate change science, and when politicians started to react to it, which is basically the 1950s, and it comes in. So I'm an old-fashioned historian. I look through the web, find whatever I can find, talk to people if they're still alive, but I go through tens of thousands of documents so that the reader doesn't have to.
Well, that's good news, to say the least.
And then at the end, at the Tennessee Williams Festival, I ran into Alyssa Plant, the head of LSU Press, and we had a 2-minute discussion, and after that, we were off and running.
You did the elevator pitch, right?
That's
And it worked.
exactly right, yes.
Well, one of the unsung heroes, in addition to thanking the presidents, of course, but as a gentleman, Roger Revelle, who I was not familiar with, but he served for 8 different presidents.
Yes, I think Roger Revelle should be in the science textbooks of the future in same mention as Galileo and some of the great discoverers, because he was an impressive scientist. He was the chief oceanographer during World War II. The Navy really valued his opinion, and he figured out that carbon dioxide, which is the main heat-trapping gas, couldn't go into the ocean without some limits. So he started funding measurements of it, and that was the original science. What people don't know is his ties to the Kennedy administration. Nobody had discovered this before, but I was in Revelle's archives one day, and he had a letter thanking him from the Kennedy administration, and they actually brought him to Washington, and he helped Kennedy on 3 speeches where they talked about climate science, and then he went on and met with President Johnson, and he met Johnson several times. So it wasn't just some obscure scientist found this new information. It was someone who was very influential.
He also had an illustrious student, didn't he?
In 1968, he was at Harvard for a few years, and he had a student, Al Gore Jr., and through a mutual friend, I actually got a copy of the syllabus of the course, and so I know what the lecture title was, and Gore was listed as one of the students, and then I have Gore's remembrances of it and the notes from Revelle. So Revelle died in 1992, so his influence lived on after his death.
And I know very close to you, and for so many years, President Carter, later the Presidential Library that you were at the helm for 13 years, but you worked very closely with the President, didn't you?
Yes, I met him in the campaign, then I worked at the White House, but I really got to know him at the library where we talked a lot about his legacy. And I found a document in the Carter Library where his science advisor says, you know, solar power is not economical right now, but it will be in the 21st century. So Carter, I actually attended a ceremony in 2017 where 10 acres of his farm was converted to solar power. And he asked me to give the opening remarks, but I never saw him so happy. And I think that, again, when the history books are written 30, 40 years from now, his role in promoting solar energy is going to be a big part of that.
Well, you have a book signing, sir. It's very exciting next Thursday.
If people haven't seen the redesigned Octavia books, they need to go, even if they don't want to hear me. But Thomas Loenberg's done a great job there, providing a much nicer space, and so I'm hoping people will turn out next Thursday, and we can talk more about the book.
Now, I know you, as it turns out, you and Gwen are longtime pals, and you're in the same book club, but you're the only persons at this table who've both worked in East Africa. So I've got to,
right.
not at the same time, though, right?
No, not at the same time.
There's nobody else I can talk to about the East African Railway other than Gwen.
It's true. And there's
Because that
plenty
is
to
one of
say.
your specialties,
Yes.
of course, East African history and politics, and Gwen for NPR,
Yes,
right?
yes,
You were
yes.
the head of the bureau.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wow. Thank you so much, Jay, and congratulations
Great
on the
to
book.
hear. Thank you.
And moving way over to New Iberia.
Right.
Okay. And one of the most revered historic house museums in the region outside of New Orleans, New Iberia, is Shadows-on-the-Teche. And it's been sort of reinvigorated, hasn't it? Tell us
Right,
about that.
it absolutely has. So the Shadows was built between 1831 and 1834, and it was originally a sugar plantation. So it was a site of enslavement. And for decades, that story of enslaved people really wasn't told. So a year ago, we really started to dig a lot deeper into our collection, into our archives. We identified over 700 names of enslaved people. And we launched a new tour and a new visitor experience, and then just this 2 months ago, we opened up a brand new exhibition that really...
Yeah, so we have some images from that too. Congratulations. So you actually put that together.
Right, yeah. So this new exhibition takes visitors through the founding of the Shadows all the way through its decline. Then there's another small exhibit on Weeks Hall, who was the very last owner of the Shadows. He was the 4th generation of the Weeks family, and he really had a huge role in saving both the Shadows and for the preservation movement in Louisiana as a whole. Then another exhibit on some of his employees. So it kind of gives visitors a really well-rounded view of the Shadows that's completely integrated with stories of enslaved people, the Weeks family, and more modern preservation stories all together.
Yes, and I think that combination, because it used to be you would go there and see the historic house, and oh, this is so lovely, you know, antebellum days and all this, and so now there's much more information about, there were over at one point 1,000 slaves in terms of all the plantations
Yeah,
that
so
the family
so
had.
the
That's
Weeks
incredible.
the Weeks family owned 9 plantations around the state,
I had
and
no
they
idea.
enslaved 1,112 people across those 9 plantations. There were only about 300 at the Shadows where we're located, but and we have names of about 700 of those 1,100 people. At this point, of course, like Jay was saying, we're still digging through the archives and digging through the documents to find the last.
And now this is
couple
downtown,
hundred.
so it's funny because it would normally have been in a more rural setting, but this is downtown New Iberia where this is seen. William Weeks Hall, what a fascinating gentleman, because he was really he had lots of friends in New Orleans, including Lyle Saxon, and part of that bohemian crowd in the 1920s and 30s, and primarily gay community, early gay community, and wild parties apparently.
Yeah, so Weeks
a
Hall,
great time in New Iberia.
Yeah, Weeks Hall was a queer artist, and
Visual artist, yes.
he had astonishing friends. I mean, a lot of them
Henry
were here.
Miller,
Henry
Tennessee
Miller,
Williams.
Tennessee Williams, Cecil B. DeMille, Lyle Saxon. All these folks, they visited the Shadows. They were a really important part of preserving the home, Weeks Hall was a member of what was called the Dixie Bohemia, which was a group of queer men and women who actually helped to preserve the French Quarter. They were some of the earliest people to begin redevelopment in the French Quarter. So the New Orleans connections to Weeks Hall were deep. He spent a lot of his formative years here. He spent his service during the First World War here. He was in the Navy, stationed here along the Gulf Coast. So he had deep connections to New Orleans.
Lots of friends, which is great. And so Shadows-on-the-Teche is open. Now, let's talk about that. Because of Hall wanted the home to be preserved.
Right.
And so what did he ultimately do?
So he saved around 17,000 documents from his family. There were 4 generations of the Weeks family who lived there. He kept them all in trunks in the attic. So as visitors go through, about 95% of the collection that visitors see is actually original to the Weeks family. So he kept
a sugar plantation, right? We should point out.
Yeah, so he kept everything. We have this really wonderful set. We have 8 sets of clothing from enslaved children, which is extremely rare. We have letters and objects. Of course, we have paintings from Weeks Hall. We have a huge collection of his paintings. But he really went out and preserved the Shadows, but also promoted it through his friends and through his connections through Hollywood.
But he didn't he leave it to the trust?
Oh, right,
yes.
Yes, he did. He gave it to the National Trust for Historic Preservation.
And that's who runs it?
That's who runs it today. So we opened up in 1961 as a museum, and we've been operating ever since.
And once again, Shadows-on-the-Teche.org. Now you all have the Sugarcane Festival coming up. In October, so lots of reasons to visit just for a visit.
Absolutely.
Or to enjoy that as well. But I'm so glad you could be with us.
Thank you.
And that's very exciting, kind of newly invigorated too, to see that. Lots of effort on your part and others. And we should point out that the executive director of Shadows is?
His name is John Warner Smith. He's a former Secretary of Labor in Louisiana. He was also the Poet Laureate here.
Yes,
as well.
In case that name seems very familiar, as it should. So very good. And time for Alan.
Well, you know, if you remember that song, I'll See You in September, remember that song? It's probably more appropriate now than ever for this season because while there's very little on the boards right this moment, in just a few more days and weeks, a lot of new shows will be opening. First of all, the Crescent City Stage will be mounting the new Amy Herzog version of A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. It's directed by Jana Mastecki, and it will mark the first time that the real-life husband and wife team, Michael and Elizabeth Elkins newcomer, will actually be playing a husband and wife on stage. Michael played Torvald, and Elizabeth will play Nora. A community preview will be held a week from tonight on Thursday, with an opening night next Friday, with some light snacks and entertainment following the 7:30 show. And also, the cast will have a talkback following next Sunday's 2:30 p.m. matinee. That's A Doll's House, Crescent City Stage. Meanwhile, across town in Metairie, JPA, that's the organization formerly known as JPAS, is getting ready to reveal the regional premiere of School of Rock by Andrew Lloyd Webber. Here's a photo of the director, Leslie Castay, along with Maestro Dennis Asaf, who will be conducting, and his music director, Max Duval. You might notice they are displaying the rock-on signal that's part of the spirit of Dewey Finn, the wannabe rock star who masquerades as schoolteacher Mr. Ned Shebley. If you want to know where they got this from, here's how they learned how to make that hand sign. It can now be revealed right here and now. There he is. That, of course, is the original Ned Shebley, the teacher. Of course, Dewey Finn, the real person, of course, masquerading as a teacher. That's Alex Brightman, who went on to fame in Beetlejuice as well as the title character. School of Rock opens with Nathan Parrish as Dewey Finn and Rachel Looney as Rosalie Mullins, along with a cast of young, talented stars, all of whom play their own instruments. School of Rock starting up in just a little bit, okay? Another cast of talented youngsters will be on display with Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman's Hairspray, making its 3rd appearance on a local stage here. That show will be running from September 13th through September the 29th out at Rivertown. And great news, of course, is that we just got that after a year of transition, Peggy, the NOLA Project has announced that Tinaj Wallace will be taking charge of the group as their new artistic director. Now, Tinaj, who's also a new mother, is taking over the reins of leadership and following in the footsteps of Andrew Larimer, who is the founding artistic director, and A.J. Allegra, who, of course, stepped down last year and is now the artistic director at Le Petit. But now, I have some great news from the Great White Way, since we're talking about theater. This is specific connections to the Crescent City. First of all, New Orleanian by choice, Michael Cerveris has taken off from New Orleans to be part of yet another Broadway musical. The two-time Tony Award winner, you see here.
And he was on Steppin' Out.
Of course, was on Steppin' Out. You see him there. He is going to be seen in just a second with yours truly and Evangeline. That's his dog. It was just announced he's going to be one of the leads as Jerry Falwell in the new Elton John musical, Tammy Faye. Michael will star opposite Katie Braben in the title role, and another two-time Tony Award winner, Christian Borle, in the musical that starts previews in October. And also, the new artwork, check this out, Peggy, that will grace all the billboards and the playbills for the Louis Armstrong musical, A Wonderful World, has just been revealed. It's a paper collage that was created by Zaharia Shin. She studied Satchmo and worked as an art director to finalize that work. So, you know, you got to check that out. That's going to be on all the playbills and all the billboards. Speaking of A Wonderful World, though, it was just announced that the star of the show, James Monroe Iglehart, will now be co-directing that musical. And here's James with yours truly when he starred as Louis Armstrong in the New Orleans premiere of that musical, which also headed up for a series of performances in Chicago. That's the same path, of course, that Armstrong took on his way to New York. James will co-direct with Christopher Renshaw, the original director, and another co-director, Christina Salju, who I just saw as the Acid Queen in the revival of Tommy, a show in which Michael Cerveris was, of course, the original star. Christopher was at the Satchmo Fest and last year promoted the show along with Louis Armstrong Authority and Armstrong House Executive Museum Director Ricky Riccardi there on the left. By the way, congratulations to Ricky for his well-deserved win for his desaturation article that took first place last Saturday in the Press Club of New Orleans Awards. Ricky found out when I texted him that he won. He was very happy. Of course, I ended up taking second place, but it was never a more wonderfully placed second place for me. That desaturation article, if you get a chance to go look it up online, is wonderful. Don't forget, by the way, Peggy, fundraisers for Le Petit coming up next week. There's the Curtain Call Ball next Friday night with a special performance by Broadway's Betsy Wolfe. And if you want some more Betsy Wolfe, the next night, Saturday, Betsy returns with her cabaret show, Pants Optional. Of course, I think a reflection on all the COVID lockdown that we had and what people were doing to kind of get through that. So please consider helping Le Petit with your purchases.
Alan, back to A Wonderful World. That's been a long time coming because Engelhart was in Spamalot for a while. So I guess they had to wait until
he came out of that. But and I told you, a year ago, I said they announced it, they're going to have it, but they're going to have to wait at least a year. Well, Spamalot did not do as well as the original iteration. They didn't know how long, and they have to find a theater. It's also very difficult to find a Broadway theater because it's very expensive, and once you commit to that theater, you have to start paying the rent on it.
And that production of the Wonderful World, which we got to see here in New Orleans,
was at the Sanger.
You can just imagine how expensive that was.
It's very expensive, and here's the story.
Lots of production
Not only is James Monroe Iglehart involved with it, and again, as I mentioned, you've got a number of other people. Vanessa Williams is one of the producers. So you've got some heavy hitters in that one too.
Thank you very much. Now time for picks, Miss Gwen.
Oh, yes. This week I had the most wonderful experience. I went to the Dewdrop Inn on LaSalle Street, and I took the tour, which I didn't know they offered tours, but they offer a free tour that explains the history of this really historically significant landmark of entertainment. And, the Dewdrop, as we know, helped launch a lot of careers. It launched Little Richard and Alan Toussaint and Ray Charles and Ellis Marsalis even and Irma Thomas. And there's plenty of audio and, that's been gathered and shared with, from the Tulane University's Special Collections Department. I think it was Melissa Weber, who runs the Hogan now, the Hogan Archive, and that we also know as DJ Soul Sister, along with Lauren Usher, who is an exec over at the Dewdrop. And what's wonderful about it is that it's all collected in the old barbershop, which the Dewdrop used to have. It's just beautifully appointed, and the sound is great. And I'm going to go back back. And what's great about it is that if you give them a call and let them know you're coming, you can bring as large a group as you like.
Wow, that's
and they
a deal.
will give you a tour of this place, of the barbershop, show you all these things, let you hear all this stuff, and even go just range through this huge compound if you like. And they'll sell you a Coke.
Okay.
So it's really worth seeing on LaSalle Street.
And Adam, that website again.
Shadows-on-the-Teche.org.
Jay, your website, because yours is pretty swell.
jayhakes.com.
And you talk about upcoming book signings and stuff
I have a twofer for next Thursday because you can go to Octavia Books, and on your way, since Poppy isn't here, I'll mention the happy hour at Pigeon and Whale on Ferret, which has great raw oysters and great white
He's a
wine
foodie.
at reasonable prices and a lot others. So you can have a great next Thursday night.
That sounds real good. And now my picks. We are, of course, approaching the annual Southern Decadence Weekend. This is the largest LGBTQ series of annual social events, including a drag queen brunch and a parade on Sunday that begins at 2 p.m. in front of the Golden Lantern Bar. For parade maps and more info, visit southerndecadence.com. LSU's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, that's a mouthful, is offering courses very reasonably priced in New Orleans and online for anyone 50 years and older. Wine tastings, classical music, even meditation, and Kate Chopin. Starting September 23rd, all very reasonably priced. cd.lsu/OLLI. And next Friday, September 6th, at the Ty Tracy Theater, formerly North Theater, in the basement of Garrier Hall, on St. Charles satirist Chris Champagne presents an all-new show grilling local and state politicos. For tickets, call 504-330-9117. And over to Alan. I didn't forget you.
No. Anais St. John. I didn't hear Gwen mention, but she's going to be doing some shows. And this is at the Double Dealer Bar. You don't know where that is probably, unless you've gone beneath the Orpheum Theater. It's a great little place. They make great craft cocktails. But she's going to be starting off the first of two shows, which is the Tina Turner story, Simply the Best. She's going to do that on Friday night. Events going to be available at eventbrite.com if you want to buy tickets. Then on Saturday night, she returns as Donna Summer in Last Dance, which she did as a show with Jonathan Morez some years ago. Again, that's on eventbrite.com. Go check her out. She's a wonderful talent and a tall lady, a tall drink of water, as they like to say. And I'll see you at the theater.
She is incredible. Do not miss. Thank you very much. And thank you also very much. Thank you for watching. Happy Labor Day. Bye-bye.
Programming on WYES is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
Public television is our passion. With so much content that WYES broadcasts and presents online, we are quite entertained and highly informed.
Please join us in supporting WYES.
The New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation promotes, preserves, and perpetuates music, culture, and heritage through programs, cultural, educational, and economic activities year-round. Learn more at jazzandheritage.org. This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.